Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. My name is Satomi Ogata. I am a professor at Kyushu International University in Japan and the representative director of Muslim Friendly Japan. In this presentation, I will introduce the scientific evidence, religious opinions, and international practices concerning penetrative captive bolt stunning in halal slaughter. I would also like to express my sincere appreciation to Asalet Sanjakdarolu, whose generous contribution of materials and scholarly insights greatly assisted in the preparation of this presentation. Before we begin, let me briefly outline the structure of this presentation. We will first review slaughterhouse footage and then examine Islamic legal perspectives, beginning with the Quran and the concept of maita, followed by examples from classical Islamic jurisprudence and one contemporary interpretation of Quran 5:3. We will then move on to contemporary religious opinions and practices, discuss current challenges, review the available scientific evidence, and conclude with some closing remarks. With that overview in mind, let us begin. Currently, many religious authorities in Muslim-majority countries do not permit penetrative captive bolt stunning for halal slaughter. However, some Islamic scholars, both in Muslim-majority and Muslim-minority countries, have issued religious opinions permitting penetrative stunning after confirming that the animals remained alive at the time of slaughter. However, some contemporary religious authorities and Islamic scholars, both in Muslim-majority and Muslim-minority countries, have issued religious opinions permitting penetrative captive bolt stunning after confirming that the animals remained alive at the time of slaughter. In Europe, EU legislation allows an exemption for religious slaughter, and therefore slaughter without stunning remains permitted in some countries and regions. However, because of the strong emphasis placed on animal welfare, stunning has become mandatory in many European countries and regions, and the practice of slaughter without stunning continues to be the subject of active public debate. The purpose of this video is not to argue that one opinion is superior to another. Rather, it is to encourage careful re-evaluation of penetrative stunning in light of Islamic jurisprudence, scientific evidence, veterinary knowledge, and actual slaughterhouse conditions. We will begin by examining actual slaughterhouse footage from Türkiye. These observations provide important context for the discussions that follow. Before turning to the Islamic legal perspectives and the scientific evidence, let us first examine footage from slaughterhouses. The following footage illustrates a range of slaughter practices and handling procedures discussed later in this presentation. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to Asalet Sanjakdarolu, who generously provided all of the slaughterhouse footage presented in this section. These observations will provide important context for the discussions that follow. Begin by examining actual observations from halal slaughterhouses in Türkiye. The following photographs and videos illustrate different stages of halal slaughter and provide important context for the discussions presented later. Before watching the slaughter footage, let us first look at these images showing a general view of a halal slaughterhouse in Turkey. These images are taken from an educational video produced by Eyes on Animals. At the top is the slipping box and the slaughter area, where an animal can be seen suspended upside down after removal from the box. At the bottom is part of the slaughter line. We will now look at several stages of the slaughter process. This slide shows the animal after falling onto the concrete floor and being suspended by one hind leg. This slide shows the neck incision being performed. As indicated in the original caption, the knife is relatively short, requiring the throat to be cut several times. This slide shows eye movement after the neck incision. As indicated in the original caption, the observed eye movement suggests that the animal remained conscious after the cut. The caption also notes that the brain continues to receive blood through the vertebral arteries. The following footage shows halal slaughter performed without stunning in Türkiye. All of the footage presented from here on was generously provided by Asalet Sancakdaroglu. Please observe the sequence of the procedure, from suspension of the animal to the neck incision and the subsequent bleeding process. We will now turn to a series of videos showing halal slaughter following penetrative captive bolt stunning in Türkiye. The footage includes halal slaughter following penetrative captive bolt stunning, a demonstration of the penetrative captive bolt stunner, findings from brain tissue examinations, and observations of cardiac activity after penetrative stunning. Let us begin with the first video. Our first example shows penetrative captive bolt stunning performed while the animal remains standing.
Yok aldım.
Ne bu ya?
Tamam.
The second example illustrates a different procedure in which the animal is stunned while suspended oblique position. Finally, let us examine a longer recording that allows us to observe the procedure in greater detail.
Jetzt mal das Lehrbuch hier, bitte.
Before examining the scientific evidence, let us first take a closer look at the device itself. The following demonstration is presented by Mr. Asalet Sanjakdarolu, a researcher and animal welfare inspector. In this demonstration, Asalet explains the structure and operation of a penetrative captive bolt stunner. English subtitles have been added to make his explanation accessible to a wider audience.
Bu bayıltma cihazımız. Hayvanı 2 salise içinde bayıltır ve hiçbir acı duymasını hissetmez. Bu şekilde açıyoruz. Elimizde böyle bir kuru sıkı var. Sadece patlar, mantar gibi kuru sıkı. İçinde çekirdek yok. Bunu ekipmana yerleştiriyoruz. Horozunu çekiyoruz. Şu anda hazır. Şu tetiğe bastığımız zaman patlayacak. Hayvanın kafasına bunu dayıyoruz. Buradan dışarıya sadece bir iğne çıkıyor ve gerisin geri gidiyor. Dışarıda bir şey kalmıyor. Şu şekilde buraya dikkat edin. Tetiğe basacağım. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahu Ekber. Buradan bir mil dışarı çıktı, içeri gitti. Hepsi bu kadar. Hayvan 2 salise içinde bayıldı. Bunun darbesini hissetmedi bile. Neden? O kadar hızlı oldu ki. Hızından dolayı hayvan bunun acısını hissedecek vakit bulamadı. Hepsi bu. Bu kadar güzel bir teknoloji.
Please note the contact area and the resulting damage demonstrated in this example. The following photograph shows brain tissue after penetrative captive bolt stunning. As shown in this example, the entry hole is relatively small and no major damage to the surrounding brain tissue is visible. Only minor blood spots are present. Finally, let us examine cardiac activity following penetrative captive bolt stunning. The following footage shows that cardiac activity may continue after penetrative stunning. This observation is important in discussions concerning signs of life at the time of slaughter. Having examined the slaughterhouse observations, we now turn to the Islamic legal perspective. In this chapter, we explore the Islamic legal perspective. We begin with the Quran, then examine the meaning of maita and the interpretations developed within the classical legal tradition. Let us begin with the Quran. Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 3, prohibits maita, commonly translated as carrion. This verse provides the Quranic foundation for the legal discussion that follows. The key question is how the term maita should be understood and applied. Having examined the slaughterhouse observations and related evidence, we now turn to the Islamic legal perspective. This provides the foundation for understanding contemporary discussions on penetrative captive bolt stunning. Let us now consider the meaning of the term maita. In many English translations of the Quran, maita is rendered as that which dies of itself, or an animal that dies a natural death. However, classical Islamic jurists often adopted a broader legal definition. Rather than referring only to natural death, maita was commonly understood as an animal whose life ended without valid tadkiyah, or ritually valid slaughter. In this understanding, natural death is only one example of maita. The broader juristic definition also includes animals whose lives ended without valid tadhkiyah, regardless of the specific cause of death. This distinction is important because it provides the legal background for understanding the different juristic opinions that developed within the classical Islamic tradition. Having examined the meaning of maita, let us now consider a broader point. Diversity of opinion was not limited to the definition of maita, but was a characteristic feature of classical Islamic jurisprudence more generally. The following 4 examples illustrate this long-standing juristic tradition. The first 2 concern the legal status of reciting the basmala at the time of slaughter, according to the Shafi'i and Hanafi schools. The next 2 examine how the Hanafi and Hanbali schools evaluated evidence that an animal was alive at the time of slaughter. Together, these examples demonstrate that differences of legal opinion were regarded as legitimate within the classical Islamic legal tradition. Our first example concerns the recitation of the basmala at the time of slaughter. According to the Shafi'i school, reciting the basmala is regarded as a sunnah mu'akkada, or a highly recommended practice. Therefore, even if the basmala is omitted, the meat does not become haram. This example illustrates that, within the Shafi school, the legal validity of the slaughter does not depend on the recitation of the basmala. By contrast, the Hanafi school reaches a different legal conclusion. According to the position presented by the Turkish jurist Ömer Nasuhi Bilman, intentionally omitting the basmala makes the meat impermissible. However, if the omission is unintentional, such as through forgetfulness, it is excused. This example illustrates that the same legal issue could lead to different rulings within the classical Islamic tradition. Our third example concerns the evidence that an animal was alive at the time of slaughter. According to the classical Hanafi opinion attributed to Abu Hanifa, if an animal was clearly alive before slaughter, no further evidence, such as movement or flowing blood after slaughter, is required. However, if there is doubt as to whether the animal was alive before slaughter, movement or flowing blood may be accepted as evidence that the animal was alive. This became the authoritative opinion adopted within the Hanafi school. Our fourth example presents the classical Hanbali opinion, represented by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Unlike the Hanafi approach, the Hanbali opinion regards the presence of flowing blood after slaughter as sufficient evidence that the animal was alive at the time of slaughter. This example demonstrates that classical Islamic jurists adopted different legal criteria for establishing whether an animal was alive at the time of slaughter. Together with the previous examples, it illustrates the diversity of legal reasoning that has long existed within the Islamic legal tradition. Let me briefly summarize the main point of these examples. As we have seen, classical Islamic scholars did not always reach the same legal conclusions. Differences of opinion were recognized as a legitimate part of the Islamic legal tradition. The examples we have examined show that diversity existed not only in legal reasoning, but also in practical rulings concerning halal slaughter. This historical diversity provides an important jurisprudential context for contemporary discussions on penetrative captive bolt stunning. With this background in mind, let us now consider one contemporary interpretation of Quran 5:3 before turning to a broader survey of contemporary religious opinions. Let us now consider one contemporary interpretation of Quran 5:3 presented by Asalet Sanjakdarolu. According to Asalet, the central question is not simply whether the animal was alive at the time of slaughter, but what the Quran means by maita. He argues that the Quran distinguishes between animals that die on their own and animals that die through human intervention. Since animals brought to the slaughterhouse are clearly alive, he regards penetrative captive bolt stunning as part of the slaughter process. From this perspective, even if an animal dies during the stunning process, it has not died on its own. He therefore argues that equating penetrative stunning with maita is inconsistent with the Quranic rationale. The following slide presents one of the Quranic commentaries that Asalet cites in support of this interpretation. Asalet further supports his interpretation by referring to the commentary in Ma'arif al-Qur'an. In its explanation of Quran 5:3, the commentary describes maita as an animal that dies because of some sickness or because of its natural death. According to Asalet, this commentary supports the understanding that natural death is a defining characteristic of maita in this Quranic verse. He therefore argues that an animal slaughtered after penetrative captive bolt stunning should not be classified as maita on the basis of Quran 5:3. For classical jurists, signs of life at slaughter were important because they served as evidence that the animal was not maita, the category prohibited by the Quran. Having reviewed both the classical juristic tradition and one contemporary interpretation of Quran 5:3, we now turn to contemporary religious opinions and practices. Having reviewed examples from classical Islamic jurisprudence, we now turn to contemporary religious opinions and practices. The following examples illustrate how this issue has been addressed by scholars and halal practitioners in different countries. They do not represent all Muslim scholars or halal authorities. Rather, they demonstrate that respected contemporary scholars and established halal communities continue to hold different views regarding penetrative captive bolt stunning. This diversity is reflected not only in scholarly opinions, but also in established halal practices. Our first example comes from Türkiye. Ahmet Polat Hoca Efendi explains why he considers halal slaughter following penetrative captive bolt stunning to be permissible. Ahmet Polat Hoca Efendi, a member of the Ismaila Fıkıh Kurulu, Islamic Law Council, explains that penetrative captive bolt stunning is permissible because the animal remains alive after stunning and is slaughtered while still alive in accordance with Islamic law.
Hayvanı bayıltarak kesmenin bir sakıncası var mıdır? Hocam günümüzdeki bayılmada hayvanın ölme durumu çok az. Gerçekten de çok az. Çünkü tabii bu hususta farklı uygulamalar var. Bir tam hayvanın şu alın bölgesinden böyle şu kalemin düşünün daha uzun bir şeyi. İçerisinde bir madde var. Bir anda hızlı vurarak hayvan böyle bir saniye bile değil. Bir anda basması neticesinde böyle salise daha doğrusu ifade edebiliriz. Hemen bayılıyor. Ve 4 dakika sonra bu hayvanlar genelde %98 ayılıyor. Dolayısıyla ölüm olmadığı için hayvan bu şekilde boğazlansa kurbanın eti helaldir, haram değildir. Kurban olur yani.
The website also reports that many Turkish scholars and mosque imams reviewed actual slaughter footage. According to the website, many stated that the videos contradicted what they had previously been told regarding blood loss after stunning. Next, we turn to a religious opinion provided by scholars affiliated with Dar al-Ifta and Al-Azhar in Egypt. In December 2025, we conducted a remote inquiry with these scholars. After reviewing video footage showing penetrative captive bolt stunning, the subsequent neck cut, confirmation of continued cardiac activity, and bleeding, they provided a religious opinion in Arabic. Before listening to their response, let us first look at the footage that was submitted for their review. This is the footage that was submitted to the scholars for their religious assessment. It was provided by Asalet Sanjakdarolu and shared through Professor Dr. Hisham R. Ibrahim, Emeritus Professor of Kagoshima University. The footage shows penetrative captive bolt stunning, the subsequent slaughter, and continued cardiac activity afterward. Based on this footage, the scholars were asked to provide their religious opinion. The following is the original audio in Arabic.
بعتذر لاني ما فهمتش انها خدرها وبعدين ذبحها ذبح طبيعي. اذا كان التخدير لمنع الالام عنها عند الذبح فلا باس في اكلها وتبقى مذبوحه بطريقه اسلاميه. خالص اعتذاري لعدم التدقيق، وحضرتك مشكوره انك نبهتيني انها لم تمت، يعني بهذه الوكزه اللي تخليها موقوذه لم تمت، وإنما تخدرت فوقعت ثم ذبحها وسال الدم وصار نهرا فحلال إن شاء الله.
The religious opinion from the Dar al-Ifta al-Azhar affiliated scholars can be summarized as follows. First, the footage showed continued cardiac activity and other signs of life after penetrative captive bolt stunning. Second, the scholars noted that the subsequent slaughter was carried out in the normal Islamic manner, with proper bleeding. Based on these observations, they concluded that the meat is, insha'Allah, halal. Our next example comes from North America. Unlike the previous example, this religious opinion was issued in response to a written inquiry. The inquiry described the current situation in Japanese slaughterhouses and requested religious guidance on halal slaughter. One of the questions was whether stunning could be used before slaughter, provided that the animal was slaughtered according to Islamic requirements before death. The following page presents the written religious opinion. The written response distinguished between two situations. The first concerns a bullet or electric current that causes only temporary unconsciousness. A bullet or electric current that makes an animal unconscious so that the pain at the time of slaughtering is reduced, and after a while, the animal recovers, regains its consciousness, and becomes normal. There is nothing wrong in using a bullet or applying an electric current in this manner. The written opinion also considers a second situation. It states that if the stunning method would eventually cause the animal's death, the meat nevertheless remains halal, provided that the animal is slaughtered while still alive. However, the opinion regards this method as makruh because it is considered analogous to torturing the animal. It should also be noted that this opinion discusses bullets and electric shock in general, and does not distinguish between penetrative and non-penetrative captive bolt stunning. Another written religious opinion states, the cow has to be slaughtered within 2 minutes after the gun is fired. The cow is still alive when it is slaughtered. The halal certificate should be given only after these conditions have been fulfilled. Our final example concerns the long-standing use of penetrative captive bolt stunning in halal meat production in North America. Penetrative captive bolt stunning has been used in halal meat production in the United States and Canada for many years. Halal meat produced under this practice has long been consumed by Muslim communities in both countries. The written religious opinions presented in the previous section provide important religious context for understanding this long-standing practice. These examples demonstrate that contemporary Islamic opinions and halal practices are more diverse than is often assumed. We now turn to the challenges that arise when this diversity encounters contemporary halal governance. As we have seen with penetrative captive bolt stunning, this diversity presents important challenges for today's halal governance. These challenges take different forms in Turkey, North America, and Europe. Our first example comes from Türkiye. Some slaughterhouses continue to use penetrative captive bolt stunning based on religious opinions permitting this practice. However, according to people involved in the field, some of these slaughterhouses have reportedly been threatened with closure because penetrative captive bolt stunning is not permitted under the current SMIC halal standards. A similar situation can also be observed in North America. Although penetrative captive bolt stunning has long been used in halal meat production, major halal certification bodies that certify meat for export to Muslim-majority countries generally do not permit this practice under their certification standards. Over time, such certification standards may also influence consumer perceptions of halal slaughter. Our field research in Europe suggests that this can contribute to confusion when penetrative and non-penetrative stunning are not distinguished. Animal welfare considerations have had a significant impact on slaughter regulations and public policy. An important example is the decision of the Court of Justice of the European Union concerning the use of the EU organic logo. The court ruled that meat obtained from animals slaughtered without stunning is not eligible to bear the EU organic logo, because slaughter without stunning does not satisfy the high animal welfare standards required under the EU organic regulation. Our field interviews conducted in Europe also indicated that many Muslim consumers and some mosque imams do not distinguish between penetrative and non-penetrative stunning. According to representatives of halal certification bodies interviewed during the same field research, many consumers believe that stunning itself is not halal, and therefore frequently inquire whether stunning has been used. Taken together, these examples show that current challenges in halal governance extend far beyond religious interpretation alone. They also involve certification standards, international trade, animal welfare, consumer perceptions, and practical implementation. This brings us to an important question. Why is scientific evidence important? We now turn to the scientific evidence. This section examines 5 topics: blood loss, pain and consciousness, the earlier scientific hypothesis, subsequent scientific evidence, and the EFSA scientific opinion, published in 2020. The first commonly stated claim is that stunning reduces blood loss. However, available scientific evidence does not support this claim. Studies comparing cattle slaughtered with and without stunning have found no significant difference in the total amount of blood loss. The evidence indicates that effective bleeding depends primarily on the quality of the neck cut, rather than on whether the animal has been stunned. The second commonly stated claim is that slaughter without stunning is painless. However, current animal welfare research does not support this claim. Studies, including findings from the Dial Rail project, indicate that animals remain conscious for a period after the neck incision and are capable of experiencing pain until consciousness is lost. Furthermore, if animals are suspended before losing consciousness, this period may be prolonged. In the past, it was sometimes claimed that animals slaughtered without stunning lose consciousness immediately because of rapid blood loss and therefore do not experience pain. However, subsequent scientific evidence has not supported this hypothesis, and it is no longer reflected in current international animal welfare literature. To clarify the origin of this claim, Mr. Asalet Sanjakdarolu contacted the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine at Harran University in 2020. According to Mr. Asalet, the university informed him that no experimental study supporting this claim had been conducted. The university's written reply stated that the professor who had proposed the hypothesis had passed away 8 months earlier, and that the university had no information regarding the matter. With Mr. Asalet Sanjakdarolu's permission, I would like to share this correspondence. Another common claim is that penetrative captive bolt stunning always causes immediate death. However, the evidence presented in this video, including field observations, veterinary findings, and contemporary religious opinions, suggests that signs of life, including continued cardiac activity, may remain after penetrative captive bolt stunning, allowing slaughter to be performed while the animal is still alive. As a final piece of evidence, we turn to the 2020 scientific opinion, published by the European Food Safety Authority, or EFSA. EFSA concluded that slaughter without stunning raises serious animal welfare concerns because effective pre-cut stunning is the key preventive measure against pain, fear, and distress associated with the neck cut and bleeding. According to EFSA, animals that are ineffectively stunned, recover consciousness, or are slaughtered without stunning may be exposed to these welfare consequences. Finally, we come to the concluding remarks. Throughout this video, we have examined halal slaughter from multiple perspectives, including practical slaughterhouse observations, classical Islamic jurisprudence, contemporary religious opinions and practices, current challenges in halal governance, and the available scientific evidence. These examples suggest that halal slaughter cannot be adequately evaluated from a single perspective. Rather, it should be considered in the light of Islamic jurisprudence, scientific evidence, veterinary science, and practical slaughterhouse conditions. Above all, the Quranic prohibition of maytah remains the fundamental principle. Halal standards should always reflect this principle. We hope that this video will contribute to informed, respectful, and constructive dialogue on halal slaughter. Thank you for watching.